Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the shed. I've elected to not put the camera on today because we don't have a camera wide enough to get my hair in it, as you would have heard me and Ben discussing earlier. And as Ben said, we are now diving into the Square 9 portfolio. So I just realized that I set up this PowerPoint presentation and I want to already come out of it and go do something else to show you, just to put it in context in terms of where we go. So I just want to make sure you should still be able to see the Square 9 website, Ben, is that right? Because Zoom doesn't.
Correct.
All right, guys. We talked about this before, and around the fact that Square 9 is a modular application. And if anything, Square 9 have been working really quite hard to make the application more modular, so it's more approachable to buy the separate sections of it independently of each other. And if we get time at the end, we might even look at some commercials of that, so we can kind of see how simplistic that is. Square 9, 30-second elevator. Organization founded roughly 20 years ago. 3 guys who founded it in a coffee shop in the 9 square blocks of New Haven, hence the Square 9 reference. Still own the organization. It's grown in that time to around 85 employees currently, with around 14 to 15,000 organizations on current versions, with around 65 to 70,000 users, but they never took it outside of the US. You'll see unicorns throughout the place because we refer to our applications or our portfolio as unicorns, things that we know have great commercials, that are attractive, easy to use, powerful, have all the right features, are really well supported, all of those good things, but that you've either never heard of or that are not massively competitive represented in the market, something really hard to find, or a unicorn. And Square 9 is possibly the biggest and most complex of all of those unicorns. So to just come in here, many of our MPS partners will be very familiar with the capture application set. So this is the actual scanning document capture piece, and we're going to refer into that as one point. Square 9 have a product in this space called Global Capture, and we will, in another session, as I said, trilogy, 4 parts, we will be coming back to Global Capture. And they also have full process automation, the thing called Global Action, and even web forms. But the one that we're sticking into today is GlobalSearch, the ECM offering, the archive retrieval offering, the document repository, whatever type of message you want to give it, whatever name you want to call it, that's why we're staying. And we are doing this because we learn from experience. When we first took on Square 9, we spent a very long time being very, very focused only on capture automation, because that's where a lot of our customers come from. And what we didn't realize was that there are a lot of SME, SMB organizations out there for whom capture automation is not new, but it's still not delivering what they want. With the latest market areas, ECM is actually a part that really needs to grow. But most importantly, and commercially, this is the piece that if you get customers into this Square 9 shared data with us that tell us that a whopping 40% of those customers will renew or expand their GlobalSearch licenses on a year-by-year basis. So a lot of our partners who haven't played in this space because it's too complex, too expensive, too anything else, this will be kind of news, but this really is the place you want to take your customers. So I'm now going to go back to that presentation if I can. Let's hope this all works. And you should now be able to see my front page and the agenda, which is never going to get more complicated than that, Ben, mainly because I don't want to make a more complicated agenda slide. So, got to say.
You're just going to keep using that one. Why, what, how, where?
Yes, brilliant.
Who?
Unicorn. There we go. Unicorn. Why are we doing this? We're going to run through this really quickly. I keep telling this story for the simple reason that it keeps coming back up. If you had spoken to us at the back end of last year or even the very beginning of this year, we were still talking about growth of 6.78 billion in 2023 and all the rest of it. And that in itself was a reason to get into the market. And then the badly cooked fruit bat was consumed, and before you know it, the world's in pandemic, and the numbers are even more significant. And we covered this in one of our Market Ready presentations. Ben probably has a link to a video of it if you really want to understand what we were learning.
I do.
But the long and short of it is, this is the growth area. For every page which is not being printed, somebody is working on a digital process. Those documents haven't gone away. What they have done is changed. And so I'm not going to dwell in this, not going to talk about the numbers. We've already done that. We can come back to it. Feel free to ask for access to the presentation if you want to. Suffice to say, there is a very significant reason to get into ECM. And there we go. You guys have been selling capture. We're all familiar with that, and we're going to talk about a very powerful capture engine. But the reasons that we start to look into ECM, and we said in the write-up of this, is to compare what you're doing versus what you're not doing. Okay, is those organizations that are moving files around digitally, whereas they were printing something a few months ago, scribbling on it, putting a post-it note on it, walking around, sticking it on Dave's desk. Yeah, or it could be a Susan or a Dave or a Clive. Doesn't need to be just Dave. This is not an anti-Dave thing, in case there are any Daves. But they're now not able to do that in the same way, or they're trying to be more resilient. They're trying to work from home, all of those good things. Again, numbers we described and discussed before. Okay, and there is an awful lot of that. As soon as you start dumping things into files and folders and subfolders, then you lose a large percentage of them, and they're filed incorrectly, and they're duplicated, and so on. And let's not forget GDPR. It's still out there. It's now more of a problem because people thought they had it all taped, and now all of those processes need to be revisited. And they need to be revisited because people are chilling out and working at home. How has he got a wooden MacBook cover? That's what I want to know. I'm not sure it's cool, but either way.
I think
Were you chatting to me, Ben? Okay, no, don't
yeah,
worry.
no, I was there. Sorry, my computer started having 5 minutes. I think it's a sticker, Damon.
Does it? Right.
Yes.
Okay. I only want one if it makes my machine go faster. Anyway, yeah, and look at that guy working from home, cool sofa, no kids. There's no Lego bricks on that man's floor whatsoever. Yeah.
I don't believe it.
It's not real at all. Anyhow, but another key driver that those businesses are looking at is actually, there's interesting stats, and I think that's that other guy's dad, just putting that out there, around the return on investment of this, how fast things go, how things move around, how you can be more effective, but basically it all affects the bottom line and the performance of businesses. We covered an interesting stat that said only 8% of fully digitized businesses were actually affected by the pandemic in terms of administration. That's phenomenal, and a reason to get into ECM. We've talked about this across the portfolio. We touched 4 categories: capture, search, workflow, and e-forms. And I am glossing over these because today is all about search. So I want you to remember these bits as we go through the piece, okay? There is a capture automation tool, and that's the one where we can do OCR and data extraction. We can use templates, we can do database validations, we can do user validations, we can do amazing things, and we will be running a session on that as well. And yes, we will be able, we can run full automation, we can run escalations, we can run timers and messaging with our BPA tool, our process automator tool called Global Action. But today, we are going to look only at Global Search, because Global Search has a couple of really key points to it. And the first thing about that is it's available at a very disruptive price point. And if you were with us last week, you'll know that we managed to deploy Global Search from a cold installation, which could be a SaaS installation with no setup, or it could be an installation by you. We managed to put accounts payable, accounts receivable, HR, contracts, and sales archiving all live, all working. And what was our record, Ben? I think it was like 38 minutes.
It was 37.5 minutes.
37.5 minutes. And we can do that at an enormously disruptive price point, as I've said. So there's this thing at the moment washing around, and I'm kind of watching it. If you were to talk to a lot of ECM salespeople back at the beginning of the year, close of last year, they were very specific, very granular. You know, every process had to be exactly customized to the same thing. And the trouble with that is we now have a mass acceleration of businesses that just need to roll out the process quickly get it working, get a return on investment happening, and know that they have a platform that as they get more experienced and use it, they can tailor it so it's much more personal. But think of it a bit like buying a car. When you get it out of the showroom, it's all spotless and you love it and it's shiny because it's working straight away. But as you live with the vehicle for a period of time, you get your own music plugged in there, you know, where your chewing gum pot goes, you know, all of that good stuff as you grow into it. And GlobalSearch enables us to do that. And of course, the bit you're asking is how, and that's what we're going to try and do now. There we go, Ben.
That's a hell of an introduction, Damien.
Gosh, I don't even know how long it took. Right. Hopefully, you should now be able to see my VM.
Yes.
Good. Right. Well, guys, I need to start with another one of my caveats for the people that have listened to me before. I apologize. I am using Zoom, which uses a load of resources. I'm running a Windows VM and I'm running an ECM platform in that Windows VM, and I'm doing all of it on a MacBook that is even older and grumpier than I am. So please be a little bit mindful. If things feel a little bit ponderous, that's because we're doing an awful lot and we're doing it over not the fastest web connection either. So there we go. Now I'm actually going to just bosh out, and at this point I'm going to remind you, we are using GlobalSearch only. We are not using any capture automation today. We're not using any template recognition or anything smart, and we're not using any process automation as well, which means everything we're doing today, we are doing with the lowest price version of GlobalSearch. So nothing we are doing today is any of the bolt-on options. We're using bare bones, and that's kind of it. So the first thing really to note about GlobalSearch is its ability to secure documents on searches. And we've touched on this a few times, but the really important piece to bear in mind, and we will try and keep this a little bit commercial as well, a little bit salesy as to where this looks like and what happens here, is I can come into GlobalSearch and I'm into the front end of this, and I'm actually in as an administrator. So I have a systems administrator account open, which is why I have all of these different bits here. So you can kind of see that I have all sorts of different things to explain, things like queues. Now, a queue in GlobalSearch terms is a shortcut. And I can link these to searches. So I can have, if you like, my speed dials, you know, I just want to find account invoices that need to be processed or need to be indexed. I can also have tasks. So as we run on our next session on business process automation, or BPA global action, these will come into play. We're not going to talk about them today. Suffice to say that when we grow into GlobalSearch, I have the ability to actually put specific tasks, not searches, but actual tasks into this user interface. So just taking a run around this. And from a GlobalSearch perspective, I can build these filing cabinets as well. So the Americans call them archives. You could call them file cabinets or repositories or sections, whatever you want. And we can even sub-archive those. So we can do cabinets within cabinets within cabinets. But even though I have access to the archives, I have access to the system, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get in. And I can run multiple systems as well if I want to. But this is the business engines setup that we deployed the other day in 37.5 minutes, because you can have all of the templates. And that's worth noting as well. Anything we use today, you can have. We can simply give it to you, which I think is enormously generous. It's very kind. I've decided, be kind. So there we go. But let's take a look exactly what's going on. So even though I'm here, even though I'm clicking around, and even if I go into this accounts payable piece, what will happen then is it will return a search for me, okay? If I don't have access to a search, I cannot find anything, and that's really, really important. I can have access to the system, access to the archives, access to the databases. I can have different permissions, and every element of those permissions are controlled. But unless I can run a search, I cannot find anything. And that's a real difference to what the alternative looks like. So if we just bob out kind of quickly and take a look at what the alternative is. So I'm just going to reduce that down. All right, this is me trying to create a real live example, Ben. I get told to create real live examples, so that's what I'm going to do.
Nicely done.
Usually looks like this. Okay, so I am now Susan. You can probably tell the difference. And Susan has received, works in AP, and she's received an email. And there's our email. And she knows that she's got that email and it's going to work. She could open it if she wanted to. I suppose we could do that. It doesn't really help us. Okay, so I've got lots of windows. I can open it. Great, I've got that. Now I know that that needs to go to Dave. But you'll notice, please don't send it to Dave, but never mind. So I'm going to forward that to make that accessible to Dave. So I'm going to send it to Dave at square9.local. Lovely. Yeah, invoice. Approve this ? Because there's no way for me to fill in a rule or do anything else and to kind of sort that out. And you can see that that process would now mean that I can, there we go. Oh, that's why I can't send it. Got an American keyboard again. So there's my process. And now Dave's got an invoice and he's going to say, oh, yeah, okay, I've taken a look at that and I'm going to reply. And I'm going to say, yes, there we go. And I'm going to send that back. So now it's in Susan's inbox, it's in Dave's inbox, it's everywhere. And I am still no closer to actually having it approved because it is still in here. And what I might also have done is already manually type that data into an ERP system or into an application to process that. Now, I could go the other way, of course. I could actually say, right, okay, let's be Susan one more time. And let's take a look at this and save it and try and put it in the right place. And it's going to ask me to navigate to the right thing. It's going to ask me to go into the right file. I need to make sure I remember where that's going to go. I'm going to save it. And then I need to email Dave to tell him to approve it. But how is he going to do that? Is he going to move it from a different file to a different folder to a different thing? And this really is how people are moving invoices around. Or more likely, they print them out and then move them around the office. And you can't do that because everyone's sat at home in buildings with no Lego on the floor, drinking coffee with no noise and working very efficiently. So that's not really working. I wanted to throw that up there to kind of take a feel as to say, right, guys, have you really thought about what this looks like and how this is going to work? And why, even if you haven't got a really whizzy capture engine driven up front or a full process automation piece, really think about what those processes are in terms of emailing this and grabbing that and approving that, because none of those components actually said approve this or change that or put the data where I want it. They're a set of really great communication tools. We ran through that in the presentation and the numbers and the ICO finds and everything that's driven by using email or save to file and folder, but they don't actually round out the process. So as soon as we put documents into a repository, we can start to take a look at what happens next. So let's log in as somebody else. Now, there's going to be quite a lot of logging in and out to become different users, I'm afraid. I will try my best to keep that up. But as you saw, I had an administration account. And this time, I'm going to come in as an AP user. Okay, and I'm going to give it a password. I have to type slowly. And you can see that this time we flash straight through with less choices. I have a very much cleaner, tidier interface because I'm now an AP user. And I'd like to code some invoices, please. So in this case, I have one simple button, and I know that these documents have not got all of the criteria that I want for them to be. So I could quite happily come into a document and show the browser and the viewer, rather than opening it in Acrobat or some other viewer that may or may not create a different version or may not save correctly or will print differently. And again, you can see that I can come into this thing and I can move stuff around. But I also want to just show you how we can start to interact with different things. So I could, for example, if I knew what that was, the department, I can start to power lists, and those lists can control what I want to do with it. So I'm actually going to come into administration because I believe that's where this one is from. And I know that this one has a GL code because I've looked that up, and I'm actually going to say that it's pending approval. It's ready to go, and I'm going to save it. And as I close it out, it will disappear from my queue, because all I've done is come in and populated the document without anything else happening. Now, what I could also do in here is I could start to interact with other systems. We did say that we were going to talk about interacting. So here we go. We're actually going to do a little bit of interacting. I'm going to take off the bits of information that I don't know. So I'm going to say that I don't know what that was. These are ones that we prepared earlier, guys, so apologies for that. And I'm going to take off the supplier, and hopefully this will work. You should see in the top corner a little feature called data exchange. And data exchange allows us to communicate with any database, with any back-end system that we might want. Let's just pull that out again. There we go. Take those bits out. Allows us to, data exchange will allow us to populate data across anything, any table, anything else that we might want, we can populate with data exchange. For some reason, I've dragged that one in and broken it, so that's not going to work. Oh, that's why. There we go. No, I don't want to do that. Let's do this. Come on. And you can see that as I actually allowed it to use the .NET thing, it's gone off. It's taken a look at the purchase order number that we populated off of the document, and it's pulled in the VAT and various other things and supplier name and stuff. So I can validate that there is some information there. And of course, if you've been on these sessions before, you know that every single license of GlobalSearch includes the lovely key-free indexing tool. So as I come into these different fields, you can see it's highlighting where it believes the dates are and sorting those out. It's looking at that, and it's even highlighting purchase order numbers if I want it to, which I don't in this case, and of course GL codes. And I could drive those by lists. I could have populated that as well. I could do anything that I want to in here, and so I'm saving that and I'm closing it. But what we did was we powered it with a search. I simply asked the system to take a look in here in terms of those searches. There we go. Come on. Oh, let's go to administration, which is where I want to be. We're not going to really deep dive into the technical stuff from a structural perspective, but just to start to give you an idea of what you can and can't do. All of the searches that we've built in here can be used for different things. So as I drop this down, you can see that the system can hold as many searches as we might like. And you can see that that's the search that I have set up as a thing to code, and you can see that I can start to put the rules around it. So is it empty, or is it a new invoice? It was being fed by an import or so on. And it doesn't have a GL code. And I could, of course, add to these. And I can even start to build really quite complex groups, and I can choose where around the system they go. And of course, if you build a system of searches, such as all of these, they can be imported in that super fast setup that we used in the demo the other day. So our AP user in here can simply run a single search, find the documents that they want, and allow them to move a document through the process. And that process is really controllable and granular based on where those need to be. And I can also have unlimited other searches available to me based on permissions. And access to searches can be controlled by workstation users or groups, or by domain users or groups, or even by Square 9 only users. And we'll kind of see what that does in a little moment as well. So I could even start to look for content searching if I want to. I'm not sure whether I've actually set this up. There we go. There we are. And you can see that I'm even looking across all of the content at any one point for the phrase nuts, which is existing in the documents as well. And I'm logged in as that AP user so I can move stuff around. So let's see what happens if I now need to change into becoming somebody else. So let's actually just make sure I'm doing the tidy thing here. There we go. Oh, let's log me out. I've just realized that Zoom puts its, oh, I can move it. Puts a little thing that says I'm talking over the buttons that I need to move around. So there we go. I'm going to log in as somebody else now, so we can start to get a flavor. So I put 2 documents into pending approval, and in this case, I'm going to kind of see what they look like. So I'm going to come back in, and this time I'm going to log in as Dave, because we know that Dave was getting the email version and the rest of it, and how that wasn't going to work. So we're going to see what Dave's experience is if he's using GlobalSearch. And in this case, Dave has a very clean user environment, and accounts payable, he can come here and click a search, and he only has those 2 searches. So approve pending invoices. He can't affect the change. The rules of what Dave can see are already set here, and we can run that search, and the invoices that are pending are set there. And we can see that there's actually a couple of those, because what we've done is given Dave the ability to see all pending invoices. And in a minute, we might want to be a bit more granular than that. We're actually going to come into this second one. It is possible, by the way, to not come into the document. What we could do, and I'll just do that super quickly, is push a shift key. It will pop me up a fast view, or fast-ish, given my creaky old MacBook. So I can take a look around the document and so on. And then if I want to, I could edit the status of that document here and say, well, actually, I want to approve that one. So I could do that right here. But we actually opened it up, and you can see that I can also move around it. I can key for it. And Dave, because he'd like to interact and he'd like to show everyone what's going on, he's going to highlight a couple of bits, and he's going to do his thing, and he's even going to put a stamp on it. There we go, with when he approved it. Okay, and he is going to save that. So there we are, and let's just change that approval status to, where is approved? Right at the top. There we are. He's going to save it, and he's going to close it, and it's dropped out of Dave's view. So even though we're not running automations, these searches are allowing us to see the documents and move them through a process. But as we'll see in a moment, even though we're moving them through a process, they are not moving in terms of the system. I'm going to just close out of that, because Dave's view is very nice, but we'd like to make those searches slightly more granular and more powerful. So this time I'm going to come in, and I'm going to be somebody else again. I'm going to log in as my friend Maggie May. Anyone who's been involved with our demos before is familiar with Maggie. She's a bit scatterbrained, but she sticks with it. And you can see that Maggie has an approved admin invoices. So in this case, you can only see the document which actually has the right department name and the pending value. So just to prove what's doing there, if I actually come into GlobalSearch, and this is me, obviously using my admin account, so I can see absolutely everything. You'll see that back down over here, this one's set to administration. So I'm actually going to change it whilst it's live, and I'm going to change that to sales, which was Dave's. Okay, and that's going to update. I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go back to Maggie's view and where is it? Where's my Maggie's view? There it is. And I'm going to refresh my view. That document didn't move. It is still within the same AP administration space. It is still within the same bucket, but Maggie cannot see, because even though it's in the same bucket, it's got a different lid on as far as she's concerned, so she cannot see it. And that's critical with searches. That's why they can be used for workflow, is because the document never moves container. It simply changes the view. So she's back in administration. Let's put that back. Let's just wait for it to save up a little bit. And you can tell when it saves, because the red text goes back to black. I can change that back up. And if I refresh it now, Maggie's document is back. She could quick view that if she wanted to, okay, and agree with it or not. And she could either come into it, or she could change the settings to approved or declined, or whatever it is that she might decide to do. And the document never moved, but in terms of Maggie, it now will, because, or it should do if I give it the permissions to do so, because it is all set to change based on her approval status and away it goes. Okay, and as I come back in, I have this thing, I'm going to refresh it, and you can see that this admin view is now reflecting all of the changes ready to go. But we haven't used anything expensive or clever at this point. So let's just run one last incognito window, because the next question is I really want to export them. So let's take a look at this, and I'm going to log in this time, and I'm going to be an AP manager. Now, all of these users, by the way, are being pulled from employee users and group. So, you know, these aren't being set up a blow at a time. They're being attached to users and groups, which is a lot easier. The biggest issue I have is remembering the passwords and typing them correctly. So there we go. And again, third line user, this is the thing. So I'm the AP manager. I'm happy. I want to do my export. Please show me the documents that have been approved. There are 2. Okay, and I can quite merrily, I could review them if I wanted to, but I could also quite simply export the data, give it a file name. Tell you what, let's dump that in an X. There we go. Thanks very much. And I can use square line notation here because I would really like to use the department date if I want to, and I'd really like to use the that amount. Why not? And I'm going to export with the data, and I'm going to just do that, and I'm going to put the fields in. And the fields are there in the order that you would need them to run something like Sage or anything else. And you can just simply go export, and the system will pull that thing through and dump the data out. So even without an automation, I can run different levels of approval, departmental approvals. I could start to change that search for Dave or for Maggie based on there being a value. So they can only see documents in their department up to a certain value, whereas another user can see all of them. And that's where searching actually works, because I can then post these pieces out, and you can see that it will allow me to export that folder. Okay, and that's the, is that the one? There it is. And I could open that so you can see that this could be imported directly into an ERP system with or without the image file if I want to. And again, we have not run capture automation. We have not run any other process. We've just interacted with the desktop and moved things through. In terms of Susan's experience as well, if she wanted to, good old Susan, she could just simply use one of our extensions to interact with it by simply doing this. So there we go. Rather than opening it, rather than messing around, rather than doing anything, there is our document. Okay, I've dragged and dropped it. I'm going to turn on a bit of key-free indexing just because I can. Creaky old MacBook is taking a little minute again. And I'm going to say there's a purchase order number. I'm going to click my data exchange. And hopefully in a little minute, it might keep up with me. There we go. Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, go away. I've broken it. There we go. It keeps wanting to update that. And you can see that without my little update warnings here against Visual Studio, it's pulled through the net amount, the VAT amount, the supplier name, and everything that was on the purchase order. So I can visibly check those out. Am I happy with them? Yes, I am. I can key free the rest of the document or use the list, and I can throw this document into the process with zero issues in terms of what that looks like. And I can set it depending. There we go. Okay, and give it a GL code if I want, but we're going to get the coders to actually do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thanks very much, and save it. And so that would now fall into the searches that are being driven. By the way, even without automation, we're also sending emails out to the team to say there are invoices to be approved. In that case, that was Clive was getting that one. You can see the documents being driven there. So we get asked all the time for automations, and I need escalations, and I need processes, and I need this. But with Global Capture, even in the simplest case, as you can see, you could get somebody dragging or using email or scans, depending on what they want to do, and they could be running documents through processes and approvals straight away and using searches with these queues to really mirror out those processes. So let's take another look where we've kind of used a couple of extra other features in here. So I'm still in as administrator, and I'm going to come into this HR space. I'm just going to run a search, and we refer to those broad searches as browse searches, and they're actually created automatically. So you can turn on browse searches and even edit them and make them available. But this is essentially a fast way to get a search happening across across all indexes as you build one. Just nice and easy to do. And you can see here that what I've got is I've got a couple of things. So I've got different documents and different categories being driven by this, and this is all part of our business engines build. And it's all we covered that in the 42 minutes that we ran the other day, or 37 and a half, or whatever it was. But if I just change my view a little minute, I'm going to log back in as Maggie. There we go. And you can see that I can still remember the password, which is a real something. Okay. And in terms of HR, Maggie, if she comes here, she only has this one search and it's set to find my records. She cannot edit that. And this is one of the major search operators within GlobalSearch. There are quite a lot of them. So if we come into HR, you should be able to see this find my records piece. Let me just show you that. There are these search operators all the way through it. We use them for things like dates, which I shall show you in a moment, but also things like logged in user values and such and so on. And in this case, we're picking out Maggie's logged in username. So I logged in as Maggie May. And in terms of that search, if she runs it, we should be able to see that there were 3 documents with her name locked into the employee name piece. And she cannot move those around. And it's interesting at this stage as well. Let's see what permissions she has, because we did say at the beginning, even though we can control the permissions and so on, right the way across all of the features, you can see here that Maggie has not got access to the annotations menu. She has no access to key-free indexing in there. And she has no access to things like the launcher. She can't export the document. She can, however, email and print, because we have given her email and print facilities on this archive. But we could turn those off as well. Okay, so we can really start to control what happens when we are within the system as much as anything else. So I'm going to close that, and I'm also now going to log out, and I'm going to yet again log in as somebody else to see where else that might work. So in this case, I have a user called Susan. I think we might have been Susan before, I don't know. And Susan has a password, as you would expect, and I'm logging in. And you'll see that Susan has an employee onboarding piece. I'm actually going to run it that way, which is a default search. And this is coming back and it's pulling me documents that are driven from within the employee onboarding piece. So we know that these are the categories of documents that she needs to have in terms of a checklist to get everybody through onboarding. Do I have the pieces for onboarding that are there? And you can see as we ran that search, there are in fact a lot of zeros. So we know that this particular individual is not through the onboarding process because I have zeros. And I can do that by powering a search and using a thing called a view. And I can change these tab views within the archives based on any archive or sub-archive that I want to. So I could change them. I could even choose the pretty colors that they align to. And just in terms of that, so I come up and open that search the long way around. You can see that I have an employee onboarding piece. I can tap Maggie May's name in there, and I could say run a search. It will give me the same results, but it means that I could search out for somebody else, or in which case, if I was to start to search for my friend Dave, who I know is in the system, run that search, I shouldn't get any results across Dave. So there are no documents, there are nothing for Dave in the system and across. And by using tabs, and even at the point of being able to control across multiple archives up here, so I can see that's within the HR archive, but I could, if I wanted to, okay, let's try and find my employee onboarding piece. I've got the one with the typo that I didn't fix earlier. There we are. You can see that I could start to control that across multiple archives as well. So as I run those searches, I'll be able to expand that across multiple archives, multiple departments, multiple teams, multiple anything else I want to. And so as searches go, again, it enables me to push documents into a process. So what you saw before was me moving a document from new to pending to approved to exported. And now with this, I can start to reference different categories and different document types, all with a nice, fast, easy view. And let's type in Maggie May again and run that search, and hopefully that will behave itself. And you can see there's my one queue within HR against all of those pieces. Like I say, you can control as many views as you might like. So we did talk about search operators, so we're going to run some slightly different search operators. Let me just get myself tidy here a little minute. I'm going to close out again, so I'm not going to be Susan again for a moment. I'm going to come back in, and I'm actually going to, this time, I'm going to start to run as Maggie again. Now, oh, I do need to go to the right web page first. Okay, there we go. I'm logged back in now. Let's see what Maggie May can do around some contracts. Password. There we go. running this sign in piece. Okay, now Maggie works in sales and admin, and that's really cool. And from a GDPR perspective, she would like to be able to find all of our active contracts. So we put a search operator in, which is based on the contract end date. And you can see there that what we've got across here is different contract terms, different things happening, and different end dates and stuff that are actively running across. So these are all contracts that are within their end date. But from a sales perspective, I'd really like to be able to narrow that down to things that are within 30 days. Thanks very much. And of course, there is now one, so I can come back in and know that this document is becoming near end of contract, and actually push that out to, you know, so the sales team can start to work with that, and, you know, or anything else in the administration if they need to send a letter or a note or anything else that they might want to do. What I could also do from there, and let's just do this on a different piece. Let's just make sure I've got the right document with search operators there. Select tech ends on the 19th of the 7th. Let's come to the right thing in sales. There we go. I'm going to run a browse. I'm in my as an administrator at this point, as you know, so I can do anything else I might want to. So I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to say that that actually expired last year, and see what setting that allows me to change. That's now done. So I come back in here, I refresh this document, hopefully it disappears. If I go to renewal, it's not there. If I go to sales documents and I run that active list, it's not there. We should have reduced one by one. And again, Maggie has no ability to do that. And I could start to control the views based on a combination of features and filters. So I could quite happily ask for department and contract value and contract date and end time, and the documents will automatically drop out of the view based on the date that's returned. And there isn't an automation involved in there, it is simply a search. So from a GDPR perspective, I can talk about the dates and the type of activity. It doesn't have to be a contract end date, by the way. It might just be an active status or something such as that. And as you saw from me using that data exchange piece, I could enter a document and then have a quick look up against something like a CRM system or anything else as to whether this is an active customer or is not an active customer. So you can see that searches are becoming really, really powerful in how they work and how they expand stuff out. And we can really kind of make things happen there in terms of what we might want to do with it. If you want to play with searches, by the way, there is an awful lot on the Square 9 training portal and application on what we can do with it. But we want to start to use these searches from more of an integrated perspective. So we did say in our little write-up about today that we were going to try and do something a little bit more interesting. So I'm just checking that we have this here. Okay, come into this. So Square 9 for the last 2 or 3 years have been developing this little package of things that they call extensions. I will say it's not the most exciting name for it. They could have tried to think of something slightly more dynamic, but then to be honest, they called their core product that does searching search, and their core product that does capture capture, and their core product that does actions action. So I don't think naming imagination is a big feature of Square 9. I will say that, but it does what it says on the tin. GlobalSearch extensions allow you to interact more with the desktop that you're in. We're obviously using a web browser. These are extensions that are run locally. They're also used to start to push more resource into the desktop rather than needing everything to be in the server in case everything's there. You guys will notice that there is a message at the top, and it's because I'm not running any Twain drivers. I do have the ability to scan documents directly into GlobalSearch without a capture tool, so we don't only have drag and drop without capture. And of course, we are going to talk about capture again. But the first piece that I really want to show you is this nice little image exchange piece, because we're now starting to interact with the document slightly differently. And you can see that the admin guys have received a request for an invoice. Can we please get a copy of the invoice? So I'm going to try and remember what I had set up. In fact, I'll just show you how this works. This is image exchange. and you can see it's running here, and I can choose which searches. So we're talking about all those searches. I can choose which searches are available through Image Exchange. I can make them available based on permissions and stuff. And obviously, the permissions for the searches are still controlled by a GlobalSearch. So it doesn't matter whether they're accessible through GlobalSearch. If your user cannot use the search, they will not get what's happening. So in this case, I can use the prompt against the purchase order number, and I'm simply going to hold my mouse over, and it's going to hopefully go off if I've remembered the right button. There we go. It's taken the string. It's asking me to sign in, which is reasonable because, you know, it doesn't know who I am. Thanks very much. And I'm going to sign in. And it's going to take me directly to the accounts payable document and the PO and the purchase order, all pertaining to that one purchase order number right there. So I could do that, and then I could interact with the documents and even export them or email them with or without annotations. There we go, into the email client for me to fire those documents back. Rather than me needing to save them, drag them, drop them, find them in a file, attach them to an email, any of those good things, it's going to enable me to move them into an email so I can send them straight on back. Of course, if I was using an automation engine, we could start to do more things like that. But there we go. So you can see that.
Sorry,
yes,
we got a question earlier on. If I may have missed it, apologies. If you use the approved stamp, can that trigger the status change to approve?
If you're using a global action, you could achieve that. The reality is you would actually be better to have it as a drop list, but you can start to interact with it in different ways, yes. Using that, no, we would have a field to do it.
Okay. And the other one I would suggest is pretty straightforward. It says date's always an issue, assuming you can change the slash to a hyphen, but you can pretty much set the date format how you want it, can't you? That's
right. As long as you capture a date in a recognizable format, Square 9 will represent it in the format that you want. So we have that then capturing a date in a slash, but replacing the slashes with hyphens in case we did an export, which we definitely would do from an AP perspective. We don't want it creating subfolders or files or anything else. So yes.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Okey-dokes. I've kind of lost where I was now. Oh yes, we were interacting with the desktop. We were using Image Exchange. So yeah, that process there, guys, in case you didn't see it, let me close out of this thing again, was I have a shortcut key. And by the way, I can do that either with a shortcut key or with an OCR box as well, starting to interact with it. So when you think about that, we're starting to talk about getting getting ECM, search, archive retrieval into customers really quickly, and they're starting to talk about integrations, and I want to search from here to there. And the real big one that we get all the time is I want to get image files into my account system or into my ERP. Now, a lot of capture customers want to do this, but the question we have to ask them is why? Why do you want to do this? Because actually your ERP and your accounts applications are not really designed for document management. What you can do very quickly at very little cost is put your documents into GlobalSearch and search for them wherever. Now I'm searching from within an email right here, but what I could do is I could be clicking on a box in a Sage system or a SAP system. Yeah, okay, so I just broke that. Or in HubSpot, which is what we use, or you could put it any way you like, because we're just using screen real estate and Image Exchange to search within Square 9. So absolutely no bother at all. So let's just finish up with one last little example. I'm conscious of our time, Ben, because as you know, I can talk about this stuff for days.
Yeah, very well. You're on about 6 minutes left, so
with 6 minutes, I'm going to show you one last little piece then, okay? And I'm going to do this. I'm going to log in as my administrator because then I know I've got all the toys. Give myself a password. You'll never guess what my password is. Let's try and close out of that. Come on. There we go. Marvelous. And I'm coming into contracts. Now think of those workflows again, guys. I am a small to medium business. I do not have a whizzy ERP system. I do not have any of the special toys and tools. What I am is a few guys in an office that used to print stuff out and give it away and do that stuff, and they can't do it anymore. And they've realized that when you don't have any IT knowledge, what you do is you create a template quote or a template letter and you save it in C drive, whoever the whatnot it might be. And then someone types and overtypes and the version gets messed up and it's all really difficult. Or you dump documents into GlobalSearch. Okay. And this was the piece that we managed to get done, even though we didn't think we were going to get done then, wasn't it? And I'm going to open this little archive piece up. And my Mac is taking its time. Okay. And first of all, you'll see that this is version controlled. So I can see that this is version 4. Okay. Rather than having to create version controls by using document annotations and revision histories and all that, I don't know if anybody out there is really skilled in Word, but it drives me absolutely mad trying to understand what's going on. I want simple version control. And I'd also like to be able to move back, please. So you can see this was the revised one. I would like to revise back to the version that wasn't a revised one. So I wonder if this is the revised one. Who knows? So there we go. Yes, you can see. So I've moved this back to an alternative document. Marvelous. Okay. And what I can do from here is, if I have permissions, is I can start to move it around. I'm going to save that one. Thanks again, because I made it. And you can now see that I should have another revision number. Come on. Yep. 5 versions now, and again I can move through the timeline. So companies can change and manage and prove when they applied things and when it was done, because we can see when the file date and who made it and changed it. So people that are dealing with policies and records and documents and stuff now have a process to control that. And you can see that until I'd saved it and created a version, I couldn't do this WYSI launch thing, but now I can. So I'm going to launch the document. Now, this is unusual because in document management systems, and most of the ones that I've played with, if I want to edit the document, I have to export it out of the system, and then I need to make a change. Okay, right, there we go. And in this case, I can do this because I want to revise this one. And in this case as well, I'm going to say that it's today's date, and I'm going to interact in a slightly different way. So I'm going to say today is that date, which I think is even correct, to be fair. And I'm going to now start to do this. Select tech, and I can start to revise this template and do what I want with it. And I'm actually going to just print this one. Okay, now, okay, so I'm going to run this. There we go. And we did do this the other day, so it should be here, print to GlobalSearch. There we go. And I'm going to click print. And in a moment, that should pop up and it will start to archive things away and it will move things about. But in the meantime, I'm going to close that one down. There we go. I'll do it whilst I'm here. I'm going to say this is select tech. Now I can obviously drive this by lists, and those lists can be assembly bound as well. So they can be dynamic and, you know, make that happen. And I can, as you can see, I can power this thing up. And I can run that one by the 29th of the 6th, 2021. Lovely. And I can say that this is a service agreement. And I'm going to say it's a make agreement. And the rest of it will be locked in. And I can click save. But in the meantime, whilst it's dealing with that, I'm going to close this piece down. Okay. I'm going to update that. And you can see that it should upload my changes and create a new revision of that as well. But whilst we're waiting for that to happen, I can come in. Okay, I've locked that up. There we go. I didn't have permissions to drop it in because I've got that controlled. I can browse that document piece. There we go. Run my search, and the document has been printed too. So I can start to interact with GlobalSearch via print. There it is. There we go. There's a maintenance agreement. That's when I put it in. That's when it was entered by. And the last little piece, with my last little 1 minute, in terms of interacting with the system. So people don't want to save a document and drag and drop it. They can print it. They can run it with that. And of course, all of those contract management searches we were looking at, they would now be applied because the fields drive the searches. The thing about a lot of low-end document management systems is they only run on content searching. You can't ISO a system on those terms. It's very difficult to run workflows because I have to move documents from one container to another. So this kind of super powerful ability to change the view whilst leaving the documents in the same container is enormously powerful. And of course, it becomes more powerful if we feed it with a capture tool, Global Capture, which we'll go into next time round and build on this, or if we apply rules and automation that start to, rather than needing me to push my clearly labeled and very easy button, they actually push me into those automated queues. So we'll come back into that on another session as well, because they're both big topics. But the other real last little piece that I want to drill into is we do get those people that I don't want to use another system and web stuff. We don't like that, and they're just those people, you know, and they're lovely, I'm sure. But you'll see that in here, in terms of file exchange, I can move around, and this looks like a filing cabinet. I'm quite happy with this, and I could come into the sales documents and I want to look for stuff, but actually I'd like to be able to, I'd still like to run that search. It feels a bit like a Windows search, and I'd like to be able to run that to Select Tech. That would be really great. Let's run the search. And I'd like to, you know, I can see the end dates in there, but let's take a quick look in here in terms of the displayed field. Which one would I like? I'd like the end date, actually. Oh no, let's start with the term. There we go. And I can see that they were all 12-month contracts, and I'm running that within this. And of course I could, if I wanted to, save a document into this, or even open a document from here, which should launch, if I've got permissions, directly into a PDF viewer, because I have permissions with my logged in user to get access to the document. So I can use GlobalSearch without needing to use GlobalSearch. And of course, I could save documents into there using the front end as well. Let's open this little toy in here. So I could quite happily go File, and I could go Save As, this PC, and I could dump this into File Exchange, and I could put it into contract templates, as you can see, and I could save it out. And it would then launch that, and a way that I can start to populate things like document templates. There we go. It's going to ask me to put it in, as you've seen. I'm not going to bother with this at this point because you can see where we're at, and I have run over by 2 minutes. Ben.
Not too bad though, mate. 2 minutes. That's not too bad.
It's a lot to follow. It's a lot to follow.
Okay. Yeah, I know, mate. And I think it's worthwhile mentioning here, guys, that we do have way more to talk about with regards to GlobalSearch. So if you do want to go into any more detail, it would be worth setting up a call with yourselves, your teams, whatever it may be. We can do that and actually go into more detail than we can cover in an hour's webinar.